Welcome to another edition of Risk and Return. I'm Charlie Gasparino here with my partner Bob Sloan from S3 Partners, the Wizard of Data. We're going to get into some data stuff later on. I would be remiss to say that this is a very somber day. We've been Bob and I and our next guest have been in the New York financial scene for a long time. Today is 9/11. It was an attack on our country, but it was also an attack on the epicenter of capitalism. The planes that took out the World Trade Center were designed to destroy American capitalism that day in 2001 on this date. Um, I remember it vividly. I covered it for the Wall Street Journal. What makes this also a very sad day is what's going on nationally, and I think we would be remiss to say not mention that Charlie Kirk, his assassination, the conservative activist, is part of a trend that we have to figure out a way to stop. I should point out that I did know Charlie. I didn't know him well, but what I liked about Charlie is that even in dealing with me, I'll give you an anecdote, Bob, that I criticized him a little bit on Twitter for having a dialogue with Gavin Newsom. And instead of like lashing out at me, and it wasn't a harsh criticism, but I said, why are we giving this idiot Gavin Newsom airtime on our, why are conservatives even trying to break bread with him because he's such a sort of bad actor, the California governor. And he said, well, Charlie, why don't you just come on my show and let's talk like I talked with him. And that was Charlie Kirk. This is why this is so senseless. He was a facilitator of free speech and conversation, and also pushing the righteousness of free market capitalism. And so this is a sad day. I don't want to dwell on that part too much, and I want to turn it over to you, Bob. Let's bring in our next guest, who can speak a lot to the events of 9/11 and afterward.
Charlie, great intro. Thank you. Jimmy, welcome to the show. A brief introduction for Jimmy Dunne, legendary deal maker, founder of Sandler O'Neill, tragically affected by the events of 9/11. And Charlie and I both thought, what a perfect guest to have on 9/11, someone that acted under pressure, took leadership, made things happen when things went really, really, really bad. And he lost a lot of good friends and family, people that he would consider family in the attacks on 9/11. And Jimmy's just a true leader. And we thought on 9/11, it is worthy, particularly with the events of yesterday, to reflect and never forget. And that's why we have Jimmy here. Jimmy ran Sandler O'Neill for 32 years. He merged the firm with Piper Jaffray, is now Piper Sandler, where he is the vice chairman and senior managing principal at the firm. And we can talk a lot about what you did in the wake of 9/11. Jimmy, welcome to Risk and Return. It's great having you.
Well, thank you both very much. Charlie, we've been friends a long time, and Bob, we're all kind of getting long in the tooth in terms of Wall Street, but it gives a good perspective. And obviously, 9/11 is an incredibly emotional day, but to echo Charlie's thought, I never met Charlie Kirk. I mean, I didn't really know that much about him, frankly, but I have read a lot about him over the last 24, 48 hours, and I've watched a lot of things he said. And, I think it's fantastic he was meeting with Gavin Newsom. I mean, I disagree with you. I know, Charlie, you come around to it, but we should be talking to one another. And I watched him, and he was not impolite. He wasn't rude. He wasn't a snob.
Yes.
He had a point of view. He tried to express it. If you were unprepared, if you had just, had vitriol and just spewed it back at him, he would respond. But even in his response, he was pretty reserved, And anyway, and here's another little fact: a 32-year-old man with 2 children under 5. I mean, shot down like a dog. I mean, we had, this whole thing about being able to say whatever you want because you disagree with them, so you can call these people these ugly words. And, you can't do that. We got to be able to talk to each other. And I can't, I've read a lot about him in the last 2 days, and boy, oh boy, he did not deserve this and
Well,
anybody that says it, to me, guys like him, a lot of guys died on 9/11, so that this guy could speak his mind,
Exactly.
and
it's really sad.
and Jimmy, this is something I kind of want to underscore and get your feelings on. Charlie Kirk was a great organizer. He was better than the RNC in organizing that. I mean, he had these sort of technical skills, but he also had this way about him where he was engaged in free speech and debate. Um, that free speech and debate today is in an atmosphere where it appears sometimes, I don't want to overstate this, that we're at civil war. One of the interesting things that I remember during 9/11, and again, I covered it deeply, was that the country kind of, the positive, you're going to say there's something positive. The country came together in so many ways, and we are not together in so many ways now. Jimmy, looking back, what do you think
it's
happened?
1,000% correct.
What happened?
And well, the reality of it is, we in our history of country, we have not had many times where a foreign adversary or a foreign someone would come in and harm some of the United States. Now they might do it to an embassy or a ship way far away, but this was really on the mainland, and we had not had much of that to our history. So that was the first time we felt like a lot of people that know what that's like.
Yeah.
And we understandably did not like it, and were resolved to doing something about it and doing something about it together. And it's really, if you look at what was accomplished down at the World Trade site in the first 9 months, where there was nothing about, you didn't have to get a pass, you didn't have to get this or that or all the, it was just get this thing done. You had people down there that wanted to act and move and get us up and moving, and it just shows you what you were able to accomplish. People talk about Sandler O'Neill recovering. That was a great thing, but we had a lot of people helping us, a lot of people trying.
Oh yeah.
And we were committed to doing it. And I know what you mean, Charlie. There's no good that came of it. When people say to me, what lessons did you learn here? I didn't learn any lessons from these cowards that got in this plane and committed murder, but the intensity of the things that I already felt, the love for my children, the love for my country, love for my firm, that they intensified that quite a bit. They did that, but they didn't teach us anything. It's just that we were better about it. And frankly, it's a little bit like, when somebody says something that you have a lot of problems until you have a health issue, then you don't have any problems. You just have the one. And that's sort of the way it was. And we need to focus on what's really important. And it's just, we're at odds with each other, and it needs to calm down considerably on all sides. We don't need, even you, Charlie, you don't need to say Calvin Newsom's an idiot. I mean, I don't agree with him, but we need to talk to each other, and this is what this guy was trying to do. It's terrible. It's
I
unbelievable
agree.
that he killed him.
I will never take it back that my view of Gavin Newsom being
Well, yeah, Charlie. I mean, he came. Just to be clear, Gavin did come after Charlie personally, so I understand the animus.
and something so idiotic.
It's so idiotic, right?
And look, I don't mean to put my nose where it doesn't belong.
No.
This that I just think that's a different issue. That's fine. And trust me, I'm no supporter of any of his policies or anything about him. And I hope they run him, because he's not going to win. But I mean, but the point is, some of the things that were said on MSNBC after Charlie's death, I mean, it's appalling. They could go in and fire these people. We got to stop. We can't arm the haters, as my son likes to say. And this kind of language and stuff really does it. It's appalling. But
Jimmy,
in terms of 9/11, it was an incredibly sad day. There was a esprit de corps. I mean, it was incredible.
Well,
I
remember being down there. I mean, so I covered the New York, Dick Grasso trying to get the New York Stock Exchange up and running. I remember walking in Merrill Lynch's offices on the other side in the what were their offices in World Financial Center, and what were my offices at the Wall Street Journal, and smelling dead bodies. Dick Grasso worked
Brutal.
with construction workers, with Verizon to get the phone lines up. I mean, this was an all-out effort with Rudy Giuliani, with firemen, with first
Everybody.
responders, with police. But you know what was interesting back then, Jim? We didn't look at police as bad people. We actually
Well,
revered
the
them.
majority of us still don't. You know,
I
other
know,
than a
but
guy running for mayor.
the
But
media today looks at just a rides law enforcement, and I think that's part of this vitriol that we're talking about does stem from a media establishment, I believe, that is antithetical to American values and culture, are in a sense revolutionary about it. And you know, Charlie Kirk was against that. I'm against that. You're against that. Our
I'm
show,
100%
Risk in
against it.
Return, we try to make people money by being civil with people. Like if Gavin Newsom was on right now, just so you know, I wouldn't call him an idiot. I would try to
I know.
converse with him, you know. But I mean,
Yeah.
just so you know, I mean, well, maybe I would. I don't know. No, I'm only kidding. But I'm just saying that we need to get back to what this show here is all about, and which we want to get your views on is dialogue, helping people get through the day, and also helping people make money, which helps them get through the day.
Well, a couple things on that, Charlie. And first of all, you know, you brought to mind something. You know, Grasso was, I mean, boy, you talk about a guy that it was unfortunate how that all worked out because
Oh yeah, I covered that too.
I love Dick Grasso. I love Kenny Langone. I wish Kenny Langone paid him $20,000 a year, and they didn't do all that because he was magnificent in that job. I'm not saying he wasn't entitled to everything he got. I'm saying it's irrelevant because that was such a perfect job for him, and he was so good in the crisis. As frankly, it's hard to believe now that Giuliani was.
He was amazing.
And it was amazing. And like, here's an example. You're absolutely right about Grasso being in the middle of this thing, trying to get all these wires and everything hooked up. A little known fact is that, and it's not a very important fact, but Kenny Langone, basically, who's a great friend of mine, basically told Dick, you got to carve out 100 lines for me for these guys at Sandler O'Neill. And Grasso's like, who are these guys? What? But that was the way it was. And if I didn't get those 100 lines, I doubt we'd be talking today, but those are the things that people did, and they did for each other. And it was, you know, I would have gotten them 2 weeks later, but I wanted to do a trade the first day we were open, just to demonstrate, you know, we're not settling for this. You know, we're pushing back. And
Right.
And the other thing that I really don't understand about all of this stuff, and maybe it's just because I have a little insecurity, but I'm desperate to hear the other side. I want to hear the other point of view in the case that I don't have something right. If somebody that's very articulate and very intelligent can go through his whole case and I don't feel like I have an issue with my argument, I'm delighted to hear that. I don't really know why we can't listen, why we're not, why that's who I want to speak to. I argue it at home all the time. My wife gets mad if I put on CNBC or MSN. I said, I want to hear what somebody else is saying that doesn't agree with us 100%. But anyway,
that's a great way to check your own beliefs. I try to do it myself.
Absolutely.
And we try to bring people on this show about that. We've had them. One thing I will point out, I spoke with Kenny Langone 2 days ago, by the way, and he's 88 and doing great. And he's just a little background on Ken Langone. He was on the board of the New York Stock Exchange.
Go ahead.
And he also was I mean, he's like one of the most revered financiers of our time. I mean, remember, he created Home Depot. He underwrote the IPO of Ross Perot's EDS way back in the day. He's richer than anybody, and he gives all of it away. His name is on Langone Hospital because he gave so much money. And by the way, he transformed that hospital. And I'm a personal beneficiary for that, for my prostate cancer. He transformed that hospital into one of the great medical establishments in the world.
I think a couple of things. Think about the things you talk about in your show. Talk about two very different characters with two incredibly different sets of skills. But Dr. Bob Grossman and Ken Langone,
yes,
you couldn't pick those two guys out of a lineup together. And I was there yesterday because I've had some issues which they've helped me with my heart. I'm absolutely fine now, thanks to Stolnick and the rest of their boys. But the point is that partnership, that combination, revolutionized NYU and basically what a contribution it's made to the city. It's one of the finest hospitals now in the world, and you couldn't find it on a map before, Kenny. But Kenny, and I'll give you another, more of a grain. Look, Kenny is a great friend of mine. So anyway, so when we had 9/11, there wasn't just anything. Kenny couldn't do enough. And one of the things I remember is we were kind of working out of it very like a closet. And he said, we got to find some space. And, I said, man, I don't know anything about real estate. And Kenny says, I know a lot about real estate. We'll go. Let's go. So make a long story short, we go to look at an area that we ended up building. Anyway, the point of the story was we go in and it looks fine to me. There weren't any columns. So, I knew we could have a trading floor. And so Kenny happened to say, well, what about the guys on the other side of this floor? Now, the story is I had an investment in that company, oddly enough, which I didn't even know where it was. It was an internet kind of, I don't know what the hell it was, but I had some money in the company. And so Kenny said to me, Jimmy, you want to go over there and see if you can get an option on that space. I said, Kenny, listen, I know we'll have an option on that space. He said, what? Why would you know that? I said, because I got an investment in it. And the way things are going for me right now, there's no way that company can survive. So anyway, that's precisely sadly what happened. But we ended up getting the whole floor. But Kenny was involved in that kind of detail. He was walking the streets. I mean, guys like that, these are, everybody talks about these finance guys. Stan Druckenmiller was walking me home at night. I mean, this was the spirit, and this is what we can accomplish if we just don't think so ill of each other, which is tiresome.
Well, let me ask you that. Let me ask you this. Let's fast forward it to today. Back then, as you know, the mayor was Rudy Giuliani. If he wanted to probably run for a third term, we would have allowed him. He endorsed Mike Bloomberg, who became the mayor, overcoming great odds. Remember, Mark Green was the leading candidate. Today,
I remember.
The man who might be mayor is named Zoran Mandami. He's an avowed far left socialist. He's got some crazy ideas. Jim, you're a New Yorker. What's going to happen?
All right, let's start.
I got to follow.
I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, but here's a couple things. Okay, I was a much better trader, much better banker, much better father, much better whatever it is from 50 on than I was at 30. Okay. This I don't know. I've never met Zoran Mandavi. Okay, but I'll tell you this: he's charismatic, he's articulate, and he has ideas that are just utterly insane to me. Okay, but the thing is, I'm not even gonna, but he's 30, whatever he is. He's 32 years old. Go and run something. And then if go and do a bit. This should not be New York City should not be an experiment lab for just this incredible, free groceries, no police. Go to tough minority areas and say, how do they feel about the idea of no police around? I mean, so I like this. And Charlie, I read your articles, and I love your provocative stuff. But you and George will this business about a contained experiment on socialism. We don't need that to know it doesn't work. There are hundreds of years of history that this is a really bad idea. Okay, and if we're gonna do this,
I didn't endorse the idea. It was I know. But
George Will, who's a pretty smart guy, and he's fantastic to read and listen to. He really has this notion of a contained experiment in socialism. So I hope Mandami wins. Yeah, let's do that in some little town in Canada. Okay, we shouldn't be doing it in New York City, which is incredibly important to the world economy. All right.
Mandami, first of all, free food in Kansas City did not work. Okay, so we have an example in the last 10 years it didn't work, but no one wants to hear that. That's number one. Number two, what does a mayor do? Mike Bloomberg, he was kind of made to be the mayor, right? He understood how to make things run, understood budgets, understood where the revenue comes from, understood how to deal with unions. Like he was, unbelievable
very successful guy.
Very ridiculously doesn't get enough credit for what he's built, believe it or not, my opinion. And then you got Mandami, who's an influencer. And what I think I would like to ask you, you know, as many CEOs, and you've got the ear of so many people, and you understand the sentiment. Why can't the donor class in New York City, with all the influence and power that is media, that is finance, that is even technology now, why can't people coalesce and say, this is a train wreck, and we have to figure this out, and we're running out of time? Why can't
Well, you know, we're a little bit in that, you know, society where even on either side, people are afraid to step and say, wait a minute, this is not right, because they're afraid of the backlash. And right now he has this wave of, oh, isn't it all wonderful? But look, I mean, I hate to even say this about somebody, but I've read pretty much what he said. It seems anti-Semitic to me. I mean, I don't think there's any debate about that. You know, there are 15 million Jews in the world, probably 6 million in New York. I mean, that's the first group that really needs to get involved in this. And I'm not, that's not my job. I mean, but I would be supportive of it. And, you know, we have these bastions. I mean, I was raised a Democrat, you know, and I want to be a Democrat. I really would like to be an Irish Catholic Democrat. I'm having a hard time because all the things that they stood for, you know, the little guy, the hard worker, the blue collar thing, the build the educational base, that's gone, you know. And they've got basically this guy that says, you know, outlaw the police. Well, and to get to Charlie's old point, the problem we've got is you have 100 instances. 1 or 2 are really bad. All the media wants to focus on is the 1 or 2. They're not talking about the 98 other guys that went to work every day, left a family, trying to do the right thing. So we got to focus on this one exception. And that's the problem. We always are picking out the one really negative rather than all of, you know, you don't get equal time on the good work, because nobody wants to hear that this guy came on doing his job every day and he's been on the corner, and then 40 years later, somebody that came out of that neighborhood's going to say what a great guy he was, but it's not enough.
One problem is that there's no real business community coalition anymore. And you know, if you, I've done a lot of reporting on this. The New York City partnership, Wall Street, they're all disjointed, and some of them want to cut deals with Mondami, and they see that as a better sort of strategy than confronting him and throwing money at one of his opponents. So that there's that. And here's why I said, and I think George Will was sort of saying what I said. Here's what we're saying, not just as an experiment. What we're saying is this city and this state, in many ways, is now controlled by the far left. I mean, they're all in the city council. They're all in the state assembly. Mondami is not that much of an outlier here. At some point, are we just putting fingers in the dike? Remember, like the kid that kept putting the fingers in it, the water's
But
coming out.
would you make that trade? Would you say, okay, we're going to put someone, by his own admission, very inexperienced, to be the mayor of the most influential, powerful city in the world, and we're going to say, yeah, you know what, we're going to take a 4-year gamble that it won't work out?
But my bigger point is
that's just not good risk management. It's terrible.
I'm not saying it is, but my bigger point is we're almost there already. I mean, New York right now, from a financial standpoint, is a shell of itself than it was even during 9/11. We know that. We just know the population decline. We know that the population that has come has been very poor. It's migrants. The population has left is anybody that can leave because they didn't want to pay the taxes. The businesses continue to diversify out of the state. We have a massive debt program. We got a lot of problems here financially because of the one party rule. I mean, gone are the days of Rudy Giuliani and George Pataki, unfortunately, or Mike Bloomberg. And my bigger point, I think this is George Will's point, was just give it to them and let the world see how bad they're going to be. And then let's build from there.
I understand your point, Charlie, and I love George Will. I don't always agree with him, but I love reading his stuff. I understand it. It's just, oh my God, it's just, you know, I just feel like I love the city, and it just can't work, and it hasn't worked. That's the thing I'm concerned about. And when you talk about people, and you name some of them, that are like, well, if he gets in, it's not the end of the world because the governor can control this and the governor
Well,
can
that's not
control
right
that.
either. Yeah.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, let me tell you something. We know the decisions. You can see it in business. There are ramifications to leadership. I mean,
Right.
there's whether it's the head of a football coach or it's the head of a city. I don't buy that. That we're going to have checks and balances.
No,
I just think that if you have that group of people that's leaning that way, to put up a poster boy that's further that way doesn't help. I agree with you, Charlie. It's not good, and I wish you could run a moderate and a fiscal conservative with a more enlightened view on social issues. I'd love that. Give that person and let them run New York City, and we can start the train back. This is not the way back. This is. I just can't believe he's going to be elected in the end. I can't believe that we won't have one person running against him, and then there'll be something to save the day. But I don't know. But I can tell you, this is my doctor over there at NYU. She was. They're going down to Brighton
hold
Beach.
it up. Hold it up. Let's see it. Let's see what you got there.
This is my doctor. I got all kinds of stupid problems, but I got this brilliant doctor at NYU. And I sort of teasingly said, "Where'd you go to college?" And she said, "Brown." I said, "Where'd you go to med school?" And she said, "Yale." I said, "I don't know how good I feel about this." I said, "You're probably, And then she said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I'm a Notre Dame boy. I bet I go a little more towards the middle." She goes, "Well, I'm not for this Mandami. Are you doing anything to stop him?" And so anyway, it's sort of a funny story. But she was going down to Brighton Beach with this, Charlie. Look at this. She was trying to. With all the Russian, I can't speak Russian, and I hope this is not anything lewd. I can't imagine it would be. But she's going down there, doing just what Bob is talking about, trying to sell people, look, be aware of what this is. Now, by the way, it's a democratic. If we can't mobilize people to get out and vote, if we can't mobilize but then you deserved it. That's a little different than George Will. It's the same result, okay? But people need to stand up now. This was like, he won't get elected. I'm not worried about. Well, he's there now.
He might get. He probably.
Well,
will.
the math.
I'm telling you,
The
it's
math
different
is what
now.
it is. The math is what it is.
Two people run. If we have two people running against him, he gets elected. So between those two guys, I don't know. We don't have good judgment. Also, we need to basically have some people in that say, okay, look, we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do it, and just face it. The other thing is, Charlie, people don't want to stand up because, and I can understand that a little bit. I tried to do something for the PGA Tour, and all of a sudden, it's just we have this environment that people give a free for all, and guys that have done pretty well, they're worried about their family. They're like, why do I want to be I'm not saying it's right, but you have some element of that it's so painful in the public eye. You want to kind of duck from it a little bit. And I understand that.
Charlie.
It's not right, but I understand it.
One question for you. You can't get elected mayor, at least this has kind of been the orthodoxy. You can't get elected mayor in New York City without union support. You got to have union endorsement. You got to have union support. You can't do it. Does Mamdani have the support from your sources when you've been talking to people?
Now, remember when you're talking about unions. My dad was an iron worker. That's a different type of union. That's a private sector union, so to speak. The public sector unions are probably going to be, Cuomo's got some endorsements, but a lot of them are, the teachers union, I believe, is moving towards Mamdani. So, he's going to have that. Whether the others fall in line, I can't tell you, but yeah, he's okay with them. They're part of the far left. They're part of the problem that I keep saying there are many mini Mandamis all over state government. It's a lot of it's because of them. All the reasons why Andrew Cuomo, who I know and I like, and I think has instincts as the moderate that Jimmy Dunne just mentioned, he'd love to see in office, and I would too. The reason why those instincts did not appear top of mind when he was governor, particularly his last two terms, is because of those groups that he was looking to appease, and because the state has gone so far left. So Andrew caved in, and he caved in on fracking, he caved in on taxes, he caved in on the size of government, and I could go and caved in on bail reform, which is a form of defunding the police. You can go on and on and on. And so I'm just saying that that's my thing, but Jimmy, as a guy that looks back a little bit as of a historian, the starkness between at least where we were in 20 in back in 9/11, back in the day, 2001, could we have pulled out of it with the political leadership we have now? I mean, back then we had Rudy, we had George Pataki, we had, even in the city council, with people like Peter Vallone. I just remember there was a lot of, there were a lot of,
The fire chief was a tremendous guy.
right. I mean, could we have gotten through that if it
Yeah,
happened
but
today?
Charlie, you don't know what people are going to do under stress. You put them under severe stress. People are fight or flight, and Jimmy's a fighter. Giuliani was a fighter. People didn't cave.
Is Eric Adams a fighter? Is Kathy?
Well, we don't know,
I think you
because
would.
we haven't put him under a lot of stress.
Kathy Hochul a fighter? I'm just saying,
I don't think he's a caver. He's been subpoenaed in the whole 9 yards.
No, but wait a second. The quality of leadership, Bob, is, I mean, it is what it is. And it's not what we had. We had two transformational leaders back then. George Pataki and Rudy Giuliani changed government for the better. Became much more efficient. Rudy instituted, sort of a policing method that was copied across the world, that worked. And now we have elected officials that are defunding the police. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, that's just one issue, but I'm just saying that. And yeah, maybe Eric Adams will rise to the occasion. He hasn't yet, and he's not facing 9/11.
But
Jimmy, what do you think?
well, let me tell you, Charlie. I tend to. I hear what you're saying. These people never reveal themselves until it's really you need. But I'll give you a little example of what I think would be different. Like in those days, I really wasn't sleeping very much. So literally, when I got home, it was, piddling around, take a shower, and then and we went right. We were in casual. We went right to full Brooks Brother gear, and anyway, and I remember I'd walk up I'd walk up from a Sutton Place up to where we were on 6th Avenue, one where KKR used to be, wherever that building, 9 West 52nd. Yeah, that's where we were. Anyway, so I would walk up there, and this is like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had the suit on, and I certainly had a firm, committed, and labor guy, guys are working on the street, this and that. They kind of look, and I'm not kidding. They'd say, you're down the Trade Center. I said, yep. And they were like, give them hell today. I mean, it was a very different thing. Now, normally, no one would even look at you. What you would do with this. But there was a esprit de corps. Everybody was interested in anybody willing to fight back. And if the form of that was fight back, was to get into business. They're trying to intimidate us. We're going to do the opposite. They want to put us out of business, just not specifically Sandler O'Neill, but they're very willing to take any. If it was a 55,
you were part of the business they wanted to put out.
You're goddamn right, I was. So my point is, you had this whole change of attitude. I mean, people that I really didn't even get on particularly well with, would write me a note or something. A woman that used to drive her crazy because we had kids in this building, one certain place, and there was no kids, and my kids are kids. I got to tell whoa, not go. They're all over the place, and she was a royal pain in the neck. Well, boom, right after 9/11, bring those kids over. I mean, what I'm telling you is, there was a seismic change of attitude that everyone felt. Now, if that happened again, I really believe that would happen again. No different than Pearl Harbor, no different than anything else. I'd rather not be tested, but I just think that American spirit is always going to be down there, Charlie. And might not be Eric Adams, could be somebody else, but people will step up, because at that point, everybody's willing to listen. It's like, a very different analogy was the Dallas Cowboys and the crazy Michael Irvin used to talk about Jimmy Johnson, who was quite a colorful character. And
I just watched the documentary.
It's fantastic.
Which I tell everybody's got to watch that Cowboys documentary.
I never liked the Cowboys. I never liked Jimmy Johnson. I never liked Michael Irvin. And I respected Jerry Jones. But anyway, it's fantastic. But the point was, Michael said, it actually wasn't in this, it was a different thing. He said, let me tell you something. You can say whatever you want about Jimmy. Not Jimmy Johnson, not make-believe Jimmy. But you can say whatever you want about Jimmy. But when we were on the field, we knew who the hell was in charge.
Right.
I think that's what you get when you get something like when they attack you come together. So, but it's a hypothetical thing. But what I think is more unfortunate is we don't need a crisis to prove that, and I just think New York City is so critical. It's been through so much. We don't need a little test in socialism. We have it enough with who's there. We don't. That would be my point of view. But I don't know anyone that doesn't in their soul that's worth anything that doesn't really have that point of view. Frankly, you have experiment people, but this guy's 30 years old. He's never run a paper out. I mean, that sounds negative. I don't mean it to be negative. I mean, go run a paper out. Go do some things. See how your views change, and then at least
I tell you
earn
what
the
I think
right
he'd tell you
to
though,
these
Jimmy. I
opinions.
tell you what I think he'd tell you, right? So, and I think this is part of how we started the show. There's moments that reveal, and we're uncomfortable with what it reveals.
Yeah.
Right. And I think
I
we're in
agree
that
with
moment.
that.
Right. We
Well-
are in that moment, and you kind of know it when you see it. Mondami would say, Jimmy, I've mastered social media. I've mastered TikTok. I've mastered the ability to make
Good
people
communicator.
feel. And, we would say, I'm a different generation. I'd say May 1940, Churchill, language, motivation. And you just talked about a great motivator, Jimmy Johnson. And it's a divide.
Yeah.
And it's
But-
a hard thing.
See, the thing is, and well, wait, just
Go ahead.
let me. I'm gonna say one thing. I'm gonna let you guys take over, but on this issue though, it's a little bit. I think I forget who it was. Maybe it might have been Napoleon that said, in order to be a great, in order to get the job, you have to be very charismatic. In order to do the job, you have to be a great. You have to be a great leader with great moral authority. And the problem is you don't have that pettiness of being a great candidate combined with the that's a very rare combination. And
Right.
it is very rare. And we have too many people that are good candidates and terrible executives, or guys that potentially could have been a great executive that's a terrible candidate.
Right.
And I mean, I don't want Charlie to jump off the phone, but Bill Clinton was a good candidate. And the last time we had a balanced budget, I think it was Bill Clinton. I mean,
Well,
and
he had a little help with from Newt Gingrich.
okay, we need a little help, Charlie. Give the devil his due. I mean,
It was a team.
Charlie.
I mean, listen, he was
Charlie,
smart
they
enough
were
to
meeting-
cut the deal.
I agree with that, but Newt Gingrich had a lot to do with it, and that don't we wonderful to have those two guys in a room with nobody watching, getting stuff done. But you'll remember, Charlie, they were meeting at the Fed, thinking about if we have no debt, how are we going to measure what
Right.
value the securities used to have? That was being discussed at the Federal Reserve.
I
Now we
remember
have
it.
$2 trillion. Isn't that? But that's the point. Now, did Bill Clinton have help? You're gosh darn right he did. And thank God for him accessing it. And I don't care if it was Bill Clinton or Bonzo the Clown. What I'm saying is the budget was balanced. Okay.
Oh, I know, but
And
he
so
was
what we need-
did it just a little history. Let's be real clear here. Bill Clinton didn't go there until there was a Republican Congress, and they
That's
started.
fine. That's fine.
And,
So
and
he's
then
really
he saw the
smart.
country changing. But by the way, he would compromise. That's what was great about the guy. He definitely compromised. That would be the
One.
Democrat we need today. But
I
again, Jimmy,
appreciate it. Or the Republican we need today. But rule number one: make a mistake, but don't defend it.
Right.
You got to give that leader credit where he was going the wrong way. He said this sucks, and he pivoted. And look at where we were now. That's it. I mean, he's a man. He's got his share of failings and everything else. I like the guy very, very much, but that is that. But the point is, we have too many guys that are really good candidates, and I don't know how executive or statesman they're going to be, or a guy that's a really terrible candidate, Romney, but would have been a great executive.
Yeah.
So that's the main problem that we have. You need pettiness to get the power, but you need really foundational values to exert proper power. We just don't have both, and that's
now we don't. But Rudy was kind of both. I mean, Rudy was pretty stirring back in the day, and so was George Pataki, and
Rudy,
so was-
and they did a great job. And Rudy, on 9/11, he wouldn't have been. And I've talked to him. We all know we all know each other. He wouldn't have been elected dog catcher on 9/11. And talking about a guy that rose and did everything the right way, he was spectacular, in that period of time. And I think other guys would, to answer your question. But All right, look, I love you
So,
guys. I can
before
talk
we
here
go,
all day,
whoa,
but
before we go,
go
are you
ahead.
optimistic about the future? Please give us something good to hang our hats on.
Optimistic. And since we're quoting Napoleon, remember what he said: coldly evaluate the battlefield and
Right.
try to remain optimistic. And that's exactly what I am. I am optimistic. I don't think he'll win and by the way, if he does win in New York City, that won't make me unoptimistic. I am optimistic. I think there's going to be. I just feel very good about what I see with a lot of young people. I am very optimistic. Could we use a little more leadership? Could we a little less vitriol, all this other stuff? Absolutely. But I am optimistic. And as far as the markets and stuff concerned, I'm definitely optimistic for the short run because they're going to cut. The Fed's waited too long. We got to get that whole thing resolved, and that's a shame. But
Markets are bullish.
that will get
Sure.
resolved. Yeah, we need a change. And the point is, Trump will do the right thing by not firing him. He is going to do the right thing by saying, he's not going to fire me. Okay, we've done that now. We've both done that. Go to your corners. Now, the best thing would be if he did resign, and the one that can't seem to how many houses she owned, she should definitely resign, okay? And, we get somebody in there with capability and credibility. I would love to see Warsh, and then let's
I'm right
let's
with
get
you.
rates
Kevin
down.
Warsh
Let's
would
get
be
going.
Kevin Warsh would be a phenomenal Fed chair.
Well,
Phenomenal.
here's what you got with Warsh. You got complete credibility with markets people.
Absolutely.
You have complete competence. You have loyalty to the country and to the office and to the purpose, and which is very important at this moment in time. And somewhat he does agree with the president, and he does feel like we've gone too far. Now, I look at the numbers today. I think we have waited too much. I think now you have a discussion of if we go down 50, it looks like we're giving it to Trump. That's as bad as doing the other.
Right.
And so we got to get somebody in there. And I think Warsh is the only. I think you could work with Bassett. I think he's capable enough that he could thread that very important line of independence right now better than anybody. And I hope to God.
And he would be independent, and he would be a trade up of many magnitudes from Jerome Powell, in my view.
Jimmy, 10 seconds.
No comparison.
Let's wrap it up.
10 seconds?
Yeah.
Who's on for the 10 seconds?
You are.
Charlie.
You're the guest.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to say is I've enjoyed this. Bob, first of all, I do these things because we always say that never forget. Well, if we don't forget, we've got to do our share in it. And look, nobody likes doing live TV. I didn't like doing it this morning. I'm nervous before I do it. But if people like you are going to ask me to do things, I will do it because that was an incredibly sad day in our country, and we need to remember the people that we and try to build something as a result of their memory for what they've done there. So I thank you guys for the opportunity. Wish you all the best. I'm off to Notre Dame now, where we have less of these problems. We have a moral force, and we're going to win that football game on Saturday. Which is what I'm more worried
before
about.
you go, I was going to join. I was going to be there with you, with Bob Dillenschneider. I don't know if you know Bob Dillenschneider, the old.
Yeah.
Bob's a Notre Dame guy, and I was going to go, but my wife's out of town, so I can't go. But I would have been there, right there with you, just so you know.
I'm sitting with Larry Fitzgerald and Judge Kavanaugh, so you would have been welcome in our box, Charlie. You would have handled, and you're welcome anytime.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for
thank
showing.
You.
All right, guys, all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming on.
That was a great conversation with Jimmy Dunne, Bob. This is a somber day on so many levels. 9/11. The tragedy of Charlie Kirk's assassination, but we are a broadcast that seeks to help people make money, and we got the perfect guy here, who has access to data that tells us where the smart money's going, and so you might be able to trade through some of this volatility that's going on, which the markets are going nuts right now, as you know. I guess it's interesting. The markets are kind of going nuts now on the notion the Fed's going to cut rates because the economy isn't so great. So just keep that in mind. But give us a little bit of some of your proprietary stuff that you're seeing.
Well, there's a couple of things, Charlie. One, we love to talk about C3 AI, which is a AI company for small business. In spite of the bullish markets skewing short. So remember, we talk about active long position versus short position. And there's a lot of shorts are leaning into that stock, which is interesting because it's such a bullish tape. So one other interesting fact about that stock is when you look it up on Bloomberg, the ticker is AI.
Oh, interesting.
So there's
They got lucky with that one.
Right, people just invest because the thing is AI. But it's interesting that that has more short sales than actually active long. So it's skewed short. Pretty interesting. Second thing, you look at the Sydney Sweeney, right? You look at American.
I look at Sydney Sweeney every day, any day,
right?
any minute.
So we put out a piece that says, Sydney Sweeney squeezes the shorts, and the short sellers actually were making a lot of money once that thing went viral and the earnings came out really bullish. Now short sellers have lost, $300-400 million. Now they're negative. So there's a squeeze going on in that stock.
So do you think it has more to go down?
Well, no, I think, in other words, the losses, yes, they'll lose more money. It seems that way. They're very tight. A lot of there's a reversal from extreme profitability.
This is a short on a continued shorting, a continued a long buying opportunity.
Yes, it is, because there's the shorts are in the stock and the borrow cost is a little higher, and it's very, very difficult to do. So more than anything,
I would love to be part of that if I wasn't covering it, which I can't. Just to say I bought the stock based on Sydney Sweeney just for the hell of it. But I also might get in trouble with the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Yeah, we would. So let's not do that. Yes. And I think lastly, well, there's also another company called IonQ, which also is squeezy-ish. It's a quantum computing company, and the market cap is about $15 billion. So this is not some small mid-cap stock. It's actually quite sizable. Short selling there. Short sellers are taking it on the chin. Looks squeezable there too. And then lastly, France. We've been watching the debt markets in France. The yield on the French government bonds, the Yotes, is higher now than the pigs. Remember the pigs? Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain from 2011, 2012. It's actually a higher yield. And what's happened is that even though the CAC short interest, it's really concentrated within the CAC, the index, and it's increased by 25% over the last 15 days. So the government's in turmoil. It may be a precursor for the rest of Europe, and you're seeing short interest really rise in the back of yields rising. So watch that.
Let's back up a little bit, little macro. European stocks were doing pretty good during the whole tariff stuff, right? With Trump, weren't they well overperforming the U.S. markets?
For a long time, that's true. France, however, is an interesting case because it's the one market we've seen short interest rise a lot. 25% rise in short interest overall for the entire market, from 4 to 5%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but for the overall market, that's a lot.
Government, they have a lot of structural problems with their government, with immigration, which you name it. It is a dysfunctional place right now. And you don't see any sort of like anybody in the wings that could straighten stuff up. Britain obviously has real structural problems with the Labour government, with immigration, with crime, and with the economy. But you do have the alternative, the Reform Party, which is taking the place of the Tories, kind of gaining steam. So there, you could see them taking over and sort of implementing more free market policies. Putting an end to the illegal immigration. So France is something to watch for. I think it's fascinating that the short interest is starting to pick up on the unrest, the social unrest.
Exactly, and then we'll see if that spills over to the UK. It's interesting, right? The pound is actually strengthened versus the dollar, which is interesting. It was down to like 110 about 2 years ago. Now it's at 135, but they have a structural problem with their deficits there, and they're dealing with it. They've appointed a budget board and so on and so forth. So is France something that spills over to the rest of Europe and then to the UK as well? So we'll see. It's interesting sentiment to watch, because if we look at our local politics, we spent a long time with Jimmy Dunne talking about that, and we look across the ocean, there's some very similar problems staring us right in the eye.
Well, we have a problem here in New York. Our New York problem is writ large in those countries. I mean,
Exactly
that's
right.
their national debate.
No, that's
Really,
the point.
nationally, Zomer Mandami couldn't be elected dog catcher nationally. Thank God. He might be able to. He can win in a 5-way race here. In this sort of bizarre place we live in, New York City, but probably not a lot of other places. Well, that was fascinating stuff, Bob. Thank you. It's been a 2-week hiatus. I'm sure you look rested up. I feel rested. I kind of missed you. Missed
Missed
our
you too,
chats.
Charlie.
I have a lot of people inquiring where the hell were we, but just so we're back to our weekly schedule now. Same bat time, same bat channel. This is Charlie Gasparino signing off with my partner Bob Sloan. This is Risk and Return. See you next week.